All right. Greetings and welcome to episode 14 on the Geek Speak. We are back with none other than the one, the only, the guy that has the first letter of the first letter in the alphabet.
Ashwing's TCG, also known as Alex.
Ta-da!
How's everybody doing? Hopefully we're all doing good. It's a fine day here on the Geek Speak pod. So happy to be here. I know you had Hank on just recently, and he's such a character. I hope to get to meet him one day in person.
I'm very excited the amount of guests that I've been able to so far manage to chat back and forth with. I know that we've had our semi-regular-ish interval here, so I'm glad we're able to keep that up because that's great. I do like to be able to carry on these conversations like this.
Yeah.
And it's nice to see some of the other individuals in the community. And I have a couple folks that might be able to line up in the next month or so. And I'd like to, try to get some people that I just would have never even thought about that may exist on the Twitters and, more in the cosplay world. There's a couple folks that I remember chatting with back in the day that would be kind of get fun to see some of those aspects, right? I don't think those are really covered near as much as I would think they would be.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's, a whole tons and tons of creators in the Flesh and Blood world, whether they be cosplayers or people, if it's people who write articles for the game or they make video content, or even if they're just developers of the game and people who are making their own formats and things like that. There's tons of people who love the game. So
there's also,
always somebody there.
Like you said, software too. I mean, Fabry, Phil.
Yeah.
He, I think it's Philip. Yeah, Philip. He makes that, and I mean that project in and of itself has to be an undertaking, right? I mean, there's just so many variety of tangential things that the web interacts with the whole world of Flesh and Blood. And in this episode, I guess I will request that this is the topic that we cover. So I had a friend, and his name is Joe. Hi, Joe. Thanks for watching, because I know you're going to end up watching this. I'm going to send the link to you because you asked in Discord. You also gave me a phone call and you texted me. So the whole and my wife is laughing in the background over there. It's great. I had an hour and a half call with him prior to this, and I was explaining some of this. But we're gonna fill in all the gaps, and we're gonna make life better. So he sent me a photo, and he said, "Hey, Jake, should I buy these?" And what he held up was these two decks at his LGS.
All right.
And I said, absolutely. I said, that is where I recommend you start. Now, he also had a KO in there. I think that was some heavy hitters. And I was like, that's not a bad option as well. But really, these were designed, right, to go into each other. And they were really the first experience as somebody would like to get in there. So there are things there on the FabTCG website, like the how to play tutorial. That's one of the examples of items that are out there that I do enjoy. But what I want to do is, today, Alex, I would like to talk about, if you have these decks, going from, you can watch those videos, but I want to talk about the fundamentals of Flesh and Blood, and maybe the journey, instead of going to the extreme of let's talk to the professional realm, let's look at the lens of a new player, and even, I'm going to call it a retrospective for myself, because I think I have forgot some core tenets of the game. So I'm going to refer to them as tenets, I guess. Maybe that's not right, but I'm believing them to be in that kind of ballpark of how to crack open this, watch a quick how to play tutorial, and then actually begin to play the game with, say, your child or your significant other, and be able to then understand, okay, I've gotten to experience this. Now I want to buy my first product, and then how do I gauge those cards? Like, what does a card really do, and why is the 0 for 3 go again, or 0 for 3 attack go again? Why is that considered the average across the card? Like, what I want to go into these tenets or these core design concepts that we've seen some articles recently kind of touch on some of those and some other various items, but that is the core of what I'd like to go. So how would you like to begin that conversation? I also prepared, if we need to, I can pull up cards using either Fabry, which is a resource if people don't know about that, or Flesh and Blood TCG or TCG player. So
Yeah, well, I'd say like first and foremost, right? We have to, we should probably begin it in the concept of you are purchasing product, right? You're gonna buy. Hopefully, the person at the LGS you go to, or the person says, "Hey, both of these first strike decks are good into each other." Or you can buy two Aurora or two Terra, or however you want to do it. They don't have to be both one or the other, but buying both is a great place to start because it does give you kind of, you're able to go and watch a video and learn how to play with these, as well as overall just have like they're very basic in the cards that are within the deck. Nothing inside those decks are anything that is super advanced. And the how to play things don't tell you about anything like pitch stacking or the general value of what a card would be, right? Which we can go into those obviously later.
sure.
But yeah, no, I think whenever you're picking up something like the first strike decks and you have no knowledge, let's say you even have no knowledge into TCGs in general, right?
And that's, I think, really where this gentleman's coming from too.
Yeah.
I got to, play a little bit of this and introduce him with a coworker when I was up there, a stay away. And it seemed like he was very interested in it at that time, but now, he's been able to, he found these at his LGS, he's willing to dive in. And I feel like this is where a lot of people are at, right? They see it on the shelf. They say, wow, this looks pretty, or that looks cool, or I've heard of this. Let's try that out. And yes, the core idea is to have an LGS that is knowledgeable and directs you on where to go and actually get you the right stuff. But I can't say that every LGS does. And honestly, I think the ones that are carrying Flesh and Blood at this point are pretty good at doing that. So I'm not really worried about it. But in the off instance that doesn't exist, this is a video hopefully that people can reference. So that's why.
Absolutely. It's something that, because at the end of the day, it's a product that a business is going to sell. So not everybody you speak to, the Flesh and Blood guy at your LGS might not be there right that day. And so if somebody comes in and they're like, "Hey, I'd like to buy Blitz, these two first strike decks. Do you suggest these are good for beginners?" And the people who cover Magic are probably going to be like, "Yeah, sure, whatever. Like, you pick them up." Like, you could also probably pick up this, round the table Tolarian Community College thing, because that's also apparently for beginners, and like all this other stuff. There are options, right? You have to be knowledgeable, but I think by now there's been enough advertising directly to the first strike decks that if you're even attempting to try and get into the game, First Strike is definitely a great place to start. And with that being said, again, it's just that the cards inside of them are so basic in their understanding that you don't need to have a deeper understanding of what each card's value is worth in Flesh and Blood. You can just play the cards, do the thing, which is great.
Well, I guess the $1 million question is, where do you want to really begin with this? Because I feel like visual representation will be useful, but there was a lot of things in that first part between the Armory decks, the Blitz, First Strike, right? I mean, there is a little bit of confusion in general with the whole term Blitz and First Strike because technically they are two branded different things, but in reality, I think they're the same core, still young heroes. It's still... So
yes.
Like, without rehashing the rules on a bunch of that, what's your recommendation to how would you describe the hero piece for somebody that may not understand what hero is? So when they pick up, I'm just going to pick on Aurora because I have it pulled up on this page here. So when we say here's the Aurora deck, it is a elemental Runeblade hero young. What's important for somebody to know with that? And I'm gonna maybe make my head tiny if I can time it right. There we go.
I think in these specific scenarios, if you are a new player and you're talking to somebody who is knowledgeable in the world of Flesh and Blood, you're going to get a lot of information thrown at you in the beginning. And that's just because with it being such a competitive game, there you go. You got it. Nailed it. With it being such a competitive game, a lot of people only come at it with a competitive mindset, right? Casual players tend to be a little bit more patient in regards to teaching people how to do stuff. I always view that my mindset whenever I'm teaching somebody is just kind of put it in layman's terms, right? Another thing, if if they're familiar with another TCG. As much as I don't
I
like
think that helps.
comparing, right? As much as I don't being like, this is like this, if it was like this, I don't love doing that, but it helps translate things better into the game. But if you, let's say you know nothing about
Sure.
Flesh and Blood and you're looking at Aurora, if you were to do that, I would say, so what this deck does is it utilizes both physical and magical damage, also called arcane damage, and splits that damage type so that way your opponent is not able to block out that damage as effectively because you are coming in with two types of damage. She also is able to play a lot of things in one turn, whereas other heroes will normally play one big thing a turn. She comes in with smaller little bits of attacks, which also makes it so it's difficult for your opponent to block out their attack. I would say that's like a very straightforward way for me to be like, because to anybody else who knows what Flesh and Blood is, I can just be like, Aurora is like Phi if they had arcane damage, and they'd get it, right? Like they'd pick it up. They'd be, oh yeah, totally understandable, right? Instance, go wide, right? I could say go wide. I could say go tall. I could say, arcane, rune chants and different arcane pitches and arcane barrier, like all this stuff. But at the end of the day, you want to make it as simple as possible for them to understand. So if I'm going to explain something like Aurora, it's just you're playing multiple small things to make it awkward for your opponent to block out damage.
So then let's jump over to Terra, which Terra would be the kind of opposite of that. That's going to be a bigger single-ish action in one turn, but you come in for a much, taller punch or a bigger, tree bark on the head. I don't know. I mean, there's
yeah, that's pretty much the concept here with Terra. Terra is, so when explaining these to new players, Aurora is the go wide deck and Terra is the go tall deck. And the reason being is that if you took one of Terra's attacks, he only comes in with one attack in most cases, and it's for like 8 to 10 damage, something like that. Sometimes take that damage and split it amongst 4 different attacks, and you have Aurora. So that's the concept between. Correct. Yes. Yeah. So that's when explaining something like go wide. It's not. It's mainly a concept of you are providing several different attacks in one combat chain, which you'll learn about the combat chain in the how to play tutorial, but it's where you put your attacks. So with multiple different smaller attacks, as Aurora would, Terra instead goes, I'm just going to play a bunch of stuff to pump up my one attack or to give my one attack more attack power and then come in with that big attack, also making it difficult for my opponent to block, because in Flesh and Blood, when you block, you lose out on your attack potential on your next turn. So
and that's the give and take component that most people typically, refer to with the game having interactions back and forth.
Correct.
For that. So let's go one step backwards here. So we've talked about some heroes in Flesh and Blood. Maybe, obviously if you watch the how to play video, I don't necessarily think I want to go into here's what the resource symbol means, here's what attack means, here's defense. I mean, we can talk about it very high level, but I feel like this video is one step beyond that. It would be my opinion. So looking at Heaven's Call here, this 1, this 5, and this 3 all mean something different. And we're going to ignore the fact that, you have to have a lightning, element with the word attack. But, I mean, these all mean things. So this here is, the one to play. So this is one resource to actually play, or one energy, is the official correct term according to
that is correct. It is energy actually, but everybody you're ever going to talk to is going to say resource. So if you want to call it resource, I do suggest using resource.
And then you got 3 different colors so far. There's not been a 4th, although I think one day we might see that. But you got red, yellow, blue. So red's 1 pitch, yellow's 2 pitch, blue is 3 pitch. Your attack down here, pretty self-explanatory, and defense, there you go. So that's my quick brief. In case you didn't know and you don't want to go look it up somewhere else, that's enough to be able to get you through the rest of this video.
Yep. Yeah. No. And that's the important part about Flesh and Blood is that all the information you are going to need is on one card, right? Everything that you'll need is here, and your card has multiple uses, no matter what it is. So if it's an instant card, it will have no block value and no attack value, but you can still pitch it for that resource to play something else. Or you can play it at instant speed, which is just being able to play it on your turn or your opponent's turn whenever you have priority. And then you can go ahead and play out those cards. But in Heaven's Claw, for instance, this simply just notates everything you need. They've taken away the flavor text of the card, so it's very simplistic. And it's just, here is a lightning action. You know it is an attack because of the power in the bottom left of the card. And you know it has a block value in the bottom right of the card. How much it costs for you to play the card in the top right, and how many resources you get when you pitch this card into your pitch zone in the top left. So everything is available right here in front of you, and each card is different in its own values.
So how would you want to approach this from if you had these two decks? I mean, there's people that have talked about, how these go into each other. I mean, I'm assuming, again, there's some conversation we're kind of glossing over here with the hero in the middle, your equipment, going in your equipment slots for your head, your chest, your arms, and your legs, and you have your deck on the other side. So there's some basic stuff there that initial tutorial, the Flesh and Blood, tutorial itself should pretty much cover and talk you through. But when somebody talks about like the value of a card and kind of the generality of, like, I think people typically say like 3/3 for 3 or something, or I don't know if it's a blue pitch with one attack, or what is the what would you say the standard card? These decks don't probably have that exact item in here, but like, what is an on? I think they call it on rate is the technical term. What is the on rate representation of basically a red, a yellow, and a blue that has a blank text box? Is this considered above rate for what's on here because it has a 5 and a 3 defense and it only costs 1 and it's a red? Like, what?
So when it comes to stuff like this, and I'm going to be honest, for anybody who is watching this is a very advanced thing to think about. I wouldn't super go so like crazy in depth into something like this. I do suggest, I know, I think We Make Best and Majin Bay have videos on like determining the actual like value of a card, right? Like, what is its value, not financial value. When we say value of a card, we're not talking financial value. Sure. We are talking what it gains you as a card. So for instance, I believe that most cases, a base value card, if we're talking like an attack action, is head jab. You'll hear a lot of people consider things head jabs when it costs 0 resources for you to play it, and a red comes in for 3 damage, and it blocks for 2, right? This is very basic in its regards. Head jab becomes better if this is a 0 cost, 3 attack power card that blocks 3. Then it's got better value overall. And the reason this is on right here is because it also has Go Again, which refreshes your action point. So getting the action point back, being able to block effectively with the most defense value an attack action can have on a card, and providing it's just the rate we see attacks come in as 0 for 3s. This is kind of a base level of what we see. And an explanation of a card that is overrate is a card like Scar for a Scar. Scar for a Scar red is overrate because is a 0 cost that has 4 power, but if you have less life than your opponent, it has go again. So this is head jab, but stronger. The only difference here is you need to be at a certain life total to play this. But overall, the concept is still that it is on rate or over rate, because you are getting more damage out of this than something else would be.
And something else that's more of an advanced thing that I'll tag in here is this is a generic. The other card was a ninja, and we're looking at here cards that are elemental rune blade, which would be
Correct.
in this case lightning. And over here in the first strike deck, we're looking at elemental guardian cards, which is going to be earth and guardian cards. So you can't necessarily always look at the one-to-one based on class, because then the hero ability and other things play into effect. But again, that's where I'm going to kibosh the whole advanced stuff on that, I think, and focus more back on maybe these two decks, so that somebody can watch this and hopefully think of some good combos. And
then another card that would be overrate is Lightning Surge, for instance. Lightning Surge is a great overrate card. It should be right next to Photon Rush. Yeah, there we go. They have the red one up there too, but this is the same kind of concept. So as I explained a little bit with
Rush red.
Lightning Surge, right above you. Nope.
No.
2 to the left of that one. There you go. Lightning Surge red. It's just like that Scar for a Scar we talked about. It's a 0 cost card that attacks for 4 and blocks for 2, but if it was played from Arsenal, it gets go again. And in most cases, you're going to want to put this in your arsenal so you can start your turn with the lightning attack on Aurora, that you can then refresh your action point and do something else on your turn. This is still presenting a ton of damage, let alone we can get into the fact of 4. The numbers 1, 4, and 7 are break points.
Yep.
And break points, what those are it's difficult for your opponent to block out breakpoint attacks without utilizing things like their armor.
Yep.
Because their armor can block with cards from their hand, but there aren't too many cards, especially not in these first strike decks.
First strikes.
There are not too many cards that block for 4. And there are cards that block for 4 in regular constructed gameplay, but they're usually defense reactions and used in different situations. So that is a 1-card block for the specific thing. But in most cases, if your opponent comes in if you're at 1 life and your opponent comes in with a Lightning Surge for 4 damage, then you're going to probably have to block with 2 cards from your hand, or 1 card from your hand and 1 piece of equipment to block out 4 damage. Because most cards, as we talk about rate, have a maximum of 3 defense value for each of their cards. Now, obviously, Lightning Surge blocks for 2, and that's where it gets its special rate. Usually, if things cost next to nothing to play, have a high attack power, and then also have the ability to refresh that action point, they remove parts of the card to make it more, balanced, right? So now if this blocked for 3, this card would be insane. I mean, it's pretty good, but it would be insane in any lightning deck forever because of its sheer value. Any card that blocks for 3 is very much so the rate people are looking for when they're trying to build a deck.
And I want to quickly point something else out, just in case, again, if hopefully you've watched the starter tutorial video, the how to play.
Mm-hmm.
But the intellect, which is 4, is the cards you draw per turn. So that arsenal slot is kind of like that invisible 5th card that you get, but you have to plan for it, and that's why you can only do certain things with it. So just in case that wasn't talked about, or you did not know what an arsenal was, the arsenal is that 1 slot below your hero that you're putting a card face down into. Typically, most of the time, there's some face up stuff. We won't go into that for now, but that is your kind of your 5th pseudo card in your hand that you can make. Again, in Aurora, she wants to go wide, so this is a good example of a location where you'd want to build all those cards out so you can go fairly wide.
Yes, absolutely. And again, a big thing with Aurora, like if we're truly talking about like techs for these decks, Aurora wants to be able to play a lightning card as early as possible in her turn. And so if Aurora wants to do that, Lightning Surge is a great card for you because you can put that card in Arsenal at the end of your turn. and then you can start your turn by attacking with the lightning card. Fry is also another great example, right? Because it's a 0 cost that attacks for 3, that has go again, and it is a lightning card. But the only difference here that you've seen that's different from any of the cards we talked about prior is that it has a 0 value in its block. So while you can theoretically block with this card, it will block for nothing.
Yep.
And therefore, you do not get any value in regards to blocking it. So
But in advanced
Fry
tactic,
is
you could block with it to cycle it out to get rid of it from your hand, so that when it comes to the end of your turn, you can draw up and get an extra card.
correct. Yes. And that is normally only a kind of a big thing to think about whenever you're figuring out who's going first and who's going second, because there is that if you are going second, you will be drawing up to your intellect at the end of your opponent's first turn. So if you're really trying to get rid of this card, then you can do that. But honestly, this card is what players will call a starter. So you want to keep this card in your hand and not try to throw it away, because you can start your turn by attacking with that card, and it costs you nothing to attack with it. And then that way you've completed the requirement that Aurora would need to activate her ability to pitch 2 resources to create an embodiment of lightning token. And also it turns on the ability of your weapon, Starfall, where you can pitch 1 resource to come in for another 2 damage and then still have go again. And you could finish off your turn with a slightly bigger attack like Heaven's Claw. So that's normally the route you tend to go in regards to these things. But as far as value goes, in Aurora, you really just want to put the pressure on with these go again cards, and then make sure that that lightning flow keyword that's in the deck, you want to make sure you utilize that to the best of your ability. So usually, again, you want to make sure that usually the first or second card you play on your turn is a lightning card. And then that way, the rest of your deck just flows super nice and natural in regards to how it should play. But if you don't play a lightning card, then a lot of your stuff ends up losing out on some of its value. And you also have to make sure that it has go again on that card to be able to continue on with a longer chain link. But if all you can do is just attack with 1 attack on your turn, you might even just want to not attack at all and put that card into your arsenal slot if it is open, because then you can utilize it for next turn for your big attack.
So one thing that I want to point out is you have an equipment suite here, and one of the interesting things about these first strike decks, it's not typical in some of the current armory options and some other different decks they've offered, is there's a couple of extra pieces of equipment here that give you the ability to have a different option for a head and a legs, in this case Spell Void. So that is kind of something intriguing. And a little odd thing that I kind of figured was, they included these because of the fact that there is Arcane coming up, and that was just an option to be able to, give you a way to help prevent some of that Arcane damage. Because otherwise, typically, unless you have the term AB or Arcane Barrier, that's not something you can typically block with cards in your hand, so that damage becomes kind of pseudo-unblockable. And in these starter decks in their current capacity, your option for blocking that or there's some prevention cards, but these are pretty much your main ways to stop that. That is correct, if I understand right? Correct?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, because there's multiple prevention cards that exist within Flesh and Blood, but specifically
Also,
for
the
these
artwork on this
decks.
is just amazing, by the way.
Yeah, I know. Cloud Cover is gorgeous. Cloud Cover, I think. Gosh, what else? Static Shock is one of my favorite arts from this Aurora deck. Super, super pretty. But yeah, so in Armory decks, or even most Blitz decks, you don't have the cards to prevent arcane damage, that magical damage that we talked about prior. And because of that, in most matches, if you're going up against a wizard or a rune blade or somebody who does more of that arcane damage, usually you want to have equipment that helps you prevent that damage. And in this situation, they kept it in for these first strike decks in case that's happening. Now, if you are playing as Aurora and you are going into Terra, then you are not going to need to equip these spell fray equipments. But if you are Terra and you are playing into Aurora, it is a good idea for you to equip these spell fray equipment pieces and swap them out with the iron rot pieces, because Aurora deals arcane damage. So if you need to prevent that kind of damage at at a crucial point in the game when you're at 1 life, or your opponent's at 2 life and you think you can get the game, and during your next attack you just need to survive arcane damage, that's where that spell void equipment is set up for. So, and there are swaps you can do for that too. Arcane barrier is a little bit more of a permanent solution when it comes to like protecting yourself from arcane damage, but there's not that in these decks. If you wanted to, you can find the null rune equipment and you can swap out your spell void equipment or your spell fray equipment for null rune equipment, and it'll be effectively the same thing, except you could block out more arcane damage using those.
So let's flip the script and talk about Terra, because that's something I'd want to try and cover a little bit. So Terra here says the beginning of each of your end phases, if there's an earth card in your pitch zone, you may pay 1 resource if you do create a might token. So Terra has a different game plan altogether, and that is the go tall game plan, and basically set yourself up for the next turn having a very interesting, so we kind of showed her this is a might token here. At the start of your turn, destroy this, your next attack gets +1. So the idea would be at the end of your turn, you're getting rid of something, getting a might token. Beginning of your turn, you're getting a +1 on the next big thing you're going and coming in with. So where would you want to start with Terra here?
Terra, I mean, as far as things go, I think Terra is probably the more simplistic of the heroes if you're just starting out, simply because of the fact that it is a go tall strategy. Right, you only care about giving 1 attack each turn, and that's all you need to do. But the core part of Terra's ability is that, again, whenever you pitch a card to pay the resources for a card or an attack you are attacking with, whether that be your weapon or it be an attack action that's in your hand, you are going to want to make sure that at least one of those cards that you pitch is an earth card. And you'll notice that it's an earth card because it says earth on the bottom, but it also has that little tree in the text box there, and it's surrounded by that green border that is around the art. So those are ways for you to determine what an earth card is. So whenever you pitch to attack with something, you can go ahead and pitch an earth card, which you have quite a few inside your deck. You have an earth card, you pitch it to pay for the resource, to make the resources to pay for your attack. And then at the end of your turn, if you happen to have any of those resources left over, you can spend one of those resources to create that might token, which will power up your next attack. Now, that might seem like +1 damage is not exactly like the coolest thing when you have somebody like Aurora who can deal arcane damage. But big damage attacks, like go tall strategies, are very much so about disruption and not about true raw damage.
I mean, look at this card here, right? It's already a 6 for 2. If it was in the arsenal, so if you had it in your arsenal slot and you played that, now it's going to be a 7. And if you had the might token, now it's an 8.
Yep. So you'd be able to come in with 8, and that's for a simple 2 resources. 1 yellow card in your hand, and that in your banish zone or in your arsenal. You can go ahead and come in for 8 damage. That is what we call in the business a 2-card 8, which is very much so overrate compared to what we'd expect to normally see. Usually a 2-card 7 is the rate which most cards end up being. But every now and again, if you've completed a specific task the card requires you to do, you can come in with a 2-card 8, and that's way more on rate in that, or well, way more overrate on that regard.
So let's talk through a possible turn that would be insane here. So let's say this turn you have Terra, and you pitch a blue card
Uh-huh.
for playing Seeds of Strength.
Yep.
So Seeds of Strength says create 2 Might tokens. Earthbond. If an Earth card was pitched for this, instead it creates 3. So just randomly say you pitched a blue Earth card like Canopy Shelter. So
Yep.
now you've pitched this. This is going to come in for 3 Might tokens. And because at the end of your turn, Terra will be able to spend that other unused resource here to create another Might token, that means you will have 3 plus 1 is 4 Might tokens. So now we're going to pretend it's the next turn. Those 4 Might tokens are going to go off. You're going to get a +4. Let's say you play this bludgeoning again, or burgeoning. Burgeoning, I think is the right word.
Yep, burgeoning.
It'll be a 6 plus 1 is 7, plus your Might of 8, 9, 10, 11.
Yep.
All for 2.
All for 2 resources. And if you pitch a blue Earth card to play burgeoning, you get to, at the end of your turn, utilize Terra's ability to make another Might token for your next turn. But the real kicker with this deck is the fact that when you look at a card like Concuss is a really, really big card in this deck because it gives you a disruptive ability when you hit your opponent if it has power greater than its base power.
Which also means that typically a card would block for 2 or 3, so you're ripping that out of their ability to defend, and if they were trying to make a bigger turn against you, you've, like you said, disrupted their ability to make that game plan happen.
Yes. Yep. And so throwing these big attacks, your opponent has to put more cards into it to block. And oftentimes most people tend to just want to block with 2 cards and then utilize the 2 cards and maybe a card in arsenal in order for them to come in with some kind of ability or attack that matches the output of the attack that you just gave them or better. And that's the give and take of Flesh and Blood. And so in Concuss, for instance, if we had those 4 Might tokens and then they went ahead and popped, and now you're playing Concuss, you're pitching a blue because it costs 3 resources for you to play it. Now Concuss is coming in for 10 damage, and on hit they discard a card. So if your opponent blocks with 9 block power here, and then you still hit even for that 1 additional damage, they're going to take that additional card or a card from their hand, and they will have to discard it.
And so I feel like it's important to mention, young heroes typically only have 20 health. You're already doing almost 50%, if not more than 50% of health when you start talking about this. And looking at the equipment suite, you have an offhand if you were playing against another Terra that can defend for 1. You have a Iron Rot helmet that can defend for 1. This chest piece has no defense. Your Hardened Knuckles have no defense, and we haven't even talked about theoretically leveraging the Destroy This to get additional. And you only have an Iron Rot. So in a perfect scenario, you only have 1, 2, 3 additional block on top of your 20 if you just look at the equipment suite. So you're at 23.
Yes.
And then going back to Aurora, and the lack of loading, again, 20 health here, and similar, 1 defense on this one, 2 defense here, and you'll notice that that's only an additional 2. So Aurora, technically, from a equipment plus, base items, has less health at 22 than 23, even though it only says 20 health.
Yep. I usually will say that if your armor blocks out damage, I consider that as a life bonus to your hero. So if your armor can block out 4 total damage over the course of a game, you are starting the game with 4 additional health, strictly because of that.
I do want to talk about one interesting difference between the Aurora and the Terra decks. The Aurora deck does not have anything with a rarity level higher than rare, but the Terra deck does have 1 card, Thrive, which is a Majestic, and I wanted to talk about this for just a second. So, Alex, what's your thoughts on Thrive here, and the inclusion of a Majestic in these 2 decks? Is that a good or a bad?
I am not sure the reason for this being a Majestic, if I'm going to be entirely honest. Usually, when things are printed in Majestic, it is simply because they did not want to print 3 colors of a card. They wanted to print just one. Majestics are normally only 1 color. And so this is to make sure that if you are going to be putting Thrive into a deck, that it is only the yellow. It is only a yellow card, and it still has the same effect as it would be anywhere else. Now, the real kicker for all of these things here is that there are cards in both the Aurora and Terra First Strike decks that were not printed in Rosetta, including
Yes.
Thrive and all of these like Lightning Flow and Earthbond cards.
Which is
None of them
intriguing
were
to
printed
me
in
now
the
that
main set.
we can say that because we just got done watching the world premiere recently, and we've
Yep.
seen everything that's out there. So, yeah, that was a shocker to me. I thought some of these cards would be in there, but they weren't.
Yep, they were not. And there's a lot, and I'm going to be honest, from a beginner perspective, there are a lot of cards in here if you're looking to take either of these 2 heroes to like a big blitz event. I mean, more specifically with Terra, because you can play Aurora in the classic constructed format,
Mm-hmm.
but even in Blitz, there are some of these cards that are super like really good rate. That rate comes back, and you want to see that in a deck as far as consistency goes, because you want to be able to provide the most damage possible in a turn for the least amount of resources. And a lot of these cards allow you to do exactly that. So at least having them is good for this matter.
One anecdotal piece that is speculation at this point is there is supposedly going to be one more hero released, according to the, I guess, not release notes, the keynote that was done by Brian Gottlieb. And with the advent of announcing Ira, I have now a 50-50 shot on who I think it's going to be. It's either going to be a Terra or it's going to be an Ira as the next deck. So
we actually, fun facts, I don't want to burst your bubble.
Oh.
During completely outside of the learning concepts here, so if anybody's here for learning, don't worry about our side tangent here. Brian Gottlieb was just on a TCG TED interview.
I haven't watched that yet. That was on my to-do right after
he
this.
did in fact confirm that Ira is not the next Armory deck.
Oh, okay.
So, but we still don't know who that is. There is assumption that it is to be Terra, because Terra came out in the First Strike deck and did not get any kind of release inside Rosetta, the new set for Flesh and Blood. But I also think that I don't think it's Terra. And that's because I think the Earth cards that came out in Rosetta don't fit Terra's playstyle. And so
fair enough.
I don't think that it's the same concept. But I could be wrong, right? And they could very well just reprint the Terra First Strike deck with 3 copies of a card instead of 2. And then add in some other stuff. Sorry, my cat just bit me. Then like pretty much keep it in the classic constructed realm. But we're not sure, right? It's obviously all an assumption, but that would be cool because then we could just play this hero right into.
It would give an upgrade path for those that got the First Strike to come into something if they didn't want to. So yeah,
exactly.
I'll be just, I guess, curious. Obviously tomorrow, when this is being filmed, tomorrow is the Rosetta pre-release kickoff day. Not the world premiere, but tomorrow, Friday, being the 13th. That's crazy. It's Friday the 13th too, by the way. I just had no idea. It's been like a weird series of like you had 9/11, then Friday the 13th. It's just like, oh gosh, it's just this is a week. This is a week.
It's a lot.
It's a week. And it's like so that's coming up, which means that we'll get to experience that if you go to any of the pre-release events. So when this comes out, that'll be after that. So hopefully you had a blast your pre-release, and I will at that point know what I opened, because I will have my first experience opening Rosetta there versus when I was thinking about going down to the Tampa World. So cards look cool though. So anyways, back on this, because I don't want to distract too much around, but that was a
real quick. I'm gonna let my cat out of the room real quick because he's locked in here with me.
Perfect. All right, now I have 3 claps to edit back toward. So whenever you're ready, we can.
I am ready. I am all ready now.
We are back with the magic of the power of the editing of the things.
That's it. That's how we do it. That's how we make that happen. But Terra, right? So the concept with Terra again is kind of the go tall, right? So you're going to want to try and provide disruption with cards like Concuss, and even just like really, really big attacks to consistently overpower your opponent and make it so they're not able to provide those really long chain links to kind of come in and combat your turn. So that's the strategy here.
So,
It's kind of just pretty basic as far as things go, which is why I like it as far as a learning potential here.
so what would be interesting, and this would be kind of a maybe a tertiary item, is we'll have to at some point see if we can get on. There's a product called Talishar, and we can
Hmm.
do a Aurora versus Terra battle if that's something you're open for. I don't know how much time you have. I don't know how long would it even take. Like, do they last very long?
No, I mean you could probably get a 20-minute game. But again, you'd have to remember that you'd probably be better off sharing your entire screen as the recording so that way people can watch the whole game instead of just watching in your little block. So,
It's true. I could uh, I could do a little wizardry and set that up real quick. I don't know if that's something you wanted to even try. I have not played the two, but it'd be fun to like banter
I
back
can
and forth as
I
we're
can, I can
talking.
slam a Talishar game.
Cut to here. Cut, 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 cut. All right. So now
All right, so we're getting into it now. So I've
we're
got.
we're gonna and I got rid of my face, and my face shouldn't even be here anymore. I know he can see me because I think I have. Well, no, actually, because you can only see my.
I can only see your screen,
Yeah.
which I won't do because that's cheating.
Oh.
So
I won the dice roll, so I guess I'm gonna go first. Why not?
there you go.
Um.
So that situation, that's pretty good. Going first means that your opponent can block out cards from their hand and then also draw up to a full hand. So you usually don't want to utilize a ton of resources in the beginning of your first turn because that means that your opponent's going to be able to just kind of efficiently block and cycle out their hand.
And I'm going to use the non spell phrase stuff, just the default kind of go with, just as a FYI.
Okay, you can certainly do that. Luckily, I do also present physical damage, so it's not like it's specific. So, in this situation, right, we don't have any sideboard as far as cards to put into the actual deck. Decks are only 40 for Blitz, so we'll just go ahead and hit submit deck down here at the bottom, and now we're in. So
Woot!
Jacob's starting us off first, so they'll go ahead and start their turn, and then I will respond in kind, and we'll kind of do this little back and forth scenario. I'll talk over everything that I do anyway, just to kind of give an example because
Do I still have my Giga Chad cards? That's
you sure
hilarious.
do.
I forgot about that. That's how long it's been since I've
That's
been
how
on
long it's
here.
been. My goodness.
Oh my geez. All right. Well, let's see here. So in my hand we have Strong Wood, we have Flourish, we have Strong Wood, and we have Thrive, that Majestic we were talking about earlier. So from my perspective here, we have a red, a yellow, a red, and a yellow, which means that really I don't have a blue to be able to do some crazy shenanigan stuff, but this Redwood Hammer takes 3 to attack. I do have the ability to destroy this, but that'd be kind of a waste this early in the game, I think, so we're not going to try that. Instead, I think we're going to attempt to, I guess, if this has Earthbound, so if a Earth card was pitched, it gets +1. It does cost 3. So we'll try something fun. We're gonna try and um, play this now. Talishar does these active layer things, so
Yes.
we're going to pitch a multitude of cards here. We're going to actually pitch Thrive and Flourish. I am not going to destroy Hard Knuckle, and I should have even one resource floating because that was 2 yellows. You'll see 1 resource is
Yep.
left here.
You've got one resource floating there. All right. And so now it's on me to block. So I can go ahead and block as efficiently as possible here. But I also want to see if I want to keep cards in my hand for the turn that I have. So let's see here. What do I want to do here? I think in this situation, I almost want to block with just one card in the scenario, and that'll bring me down to 5 life. Now, in most cases, I'd probably block for more. The cards I have in my hand are actually pretty good, and you'll see why when we get onto that. But after I've declared my blocks, I go ahead and I pass my turn. This is where we have the reaction step. So if Jacob had any attack reactions, they would go ahead and play them here. But I believe there are not attack reactions within the deck, if I recall. So there would be no direct thing there.
Is that what the red arrow on this is? That's something new. So is that just saying I pass priority on it?
No. So if you hit pass in between our life totals there.
There we go.
There you go.
Right.
Yep. So there we go. And now when he passes his turn to me, it's my turn to then determine if I have any defense reactions. I do not have any, so I am also going to pass the turn. And now that we both do not have any reactions, damage will resolve. I will take 5 damage. And now Jacob has nothing else they can do with their attack with their turn because that was the one action point they had. So now it looks like they should be able to utilize that one resource in their pitch zone to create a might token at the end of their turn.
Correct. And I was going to say that if you were going to skip over, but yep, that's what I'm going to do. And then it looks like here, put these on the bottom of deck. Now, do I get to Arsenal right now? Because I figured I should.
You will Arsenal after you put those cards in the bottom of your deck.
All right, so I will Arsenal that card and draw 4. So I want to explain just that last bit there for somebody who might be a little bit newer. So what happened at the end of that turn is there were pitch cards. Those go to the bottom of the deck, and then they get put back in the order of my choosing. And then I had another card in my hand, so I stuck that card face down in my arsenal to give me a 5-card hand. Now that card in the arsenal, unless it's a defense reaction, which we're not dealing with in this, cannot block. So that's something I'm going to be using to attack next turn. But on top of that, I also created the might for at the start of my next turn, and I now have a full grip of cards that I can do things with, such as defend against his stuff, so on and so forth. Now,
yeah.
This Talishar, I'm a little rusty with it, but the biggest thing to note here is each of these individual phases and things that are happening in the real game. So if we were playing this physically, but some of these we would just skip over or gloss over because it's kind of like a known player, you're not really having to deal with it. So that's something to consider. But anyways, that's what I got. So.
Yep. No, absolutely. So essentially, the concept here is that we have our phases and our turns. And, whenever the program, right, the system has determined that there is nothing else for you to do when you were playing Talishar, it will automatically push you to that point where you are, you're ending your turn, right?
Can
but
claim victory
in regard,
inactive. That's funny.
Yes. Yep. That's another thing too. If anybody ever goes inactive to you on Talishar, you can do that there. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to go ahead and start off my turn by playing a Sizzle. What Sizzle does is my next lightning or elemental attack this turn gets +3, and then this card has Go Again, which refreshes my action point. So now I have the +3 onto my next lightning or elemental attack. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to play this Photon Rush. This Photon Rush, because I played a lightning card, will also have Go Again, still refreshing my action point. And it will also get the +3 from my Sizzle, coming in for 6 damage, and Go Again. And so now it's up to Jacob to choose which cards they want to block with, if any at all. If normally the concept when it comes to blocking and attacking, at least, again, there are plenty more well-skilled players out there that know things better than I do. But when it comes to blocking, if you feel that you can present more damage than me by not blocking, then you cannot block. But if your hand is kind of bad and you'd prefer to just block out a lot more damage to preserve your life total while waiting for that really, really good hand, then blocking is usually more effective. So it is all based on player preference. My deck as Aurora is very aggressive, so I don't do nearly as much blocking as I do attacking. So
So I'm
that's
gonna
kind of my whole thing.
yeah. There's not a lot of on hit stuff with this deck, but I'll demonstrate a couple different things for just sake of demonstrating. So I'm gonna
Okay.
choose one piece of equipment here to block with. It's my helmet. That'll block 1 of that 6 damage,
Yep.
and then I have some other cards in my hand here that are mostly blues, and I want to point out Sigil of Shelter. Now, this is a blue that says next time you be dealt damage this turn, prevent 1 of it. And it is an instant. That's why I keep getting these requests to do something. But what's intriguing about that is because it's a blue, I could actually use it to pitch to my Redwood Hammer on another turn, which would give me the ability in that case to deal 3 damage. And then it says if an Earth card was pitched to this attack, it's +1. So in reality, because it's a Guardian instant, it would not trigger that. So it would just be 3. It also would not trigger for the next time an attack would happen. So this could be something that I could just, kind of hopefully dump on the floor. But I'll block with just that 1, and then I'm going to go ahead and say pass, which means that I will take 5.
Yep. So you'll go ahead and take 5 there after our damage resolution. Then I'm given the instant to activate my Aether Crackers here. This just says that whenever a attack I control hits a hero, I can destroy this and deal 1 arcane damage to them. How you should utilize Aether Crackers is when you are getting to the end game and you just need 1 extra damage to push through in order to defeat your opponent and they don't have any more prevention effects that you know of, you can go ahead and activate that Aether Crackers. But I don't want to do that just yet
And
because I have more damage coming in.
That's where the Sigil of Shelter would be. And you'll notice I get another opportunity here to
Yep.
leverage that as well for those that are paying attention to the video. So
There you go. Okay, so we'll go to the resolution step there. You will take 5 damage. I will go ahead and go again. And now I am going to go ahead and let's see. What do we want to do here? I'm going to go ahead and play my Starfall here.
ooh.
And so Starfall, if I played a lightning card on my turn, it'll get +1 and go again. So this will be coming in for 2 damage, and then I will be refreshing that action point and being able to go again. So this is another example of what I mean by go wide. You'll see there will be several chain links, whereas with Terra, normally you only have 1 chain link for a really big attack.
Then I'm going to use 2 of my pieces of equipment here to block out the damage.
Gotcha. All right. And so because I have 1 card left in my hand, I can go ahead and I can play this card if I have the resources to do so. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do exactly that. I'm going to play Crackling. Crackling says that if I play a lightning card this turn, it gets +1. So this will be coming in for 4 more damage. And that 4 again is a breakpoint. So if this had an on-hit effect or anything of this sort, you would want to try blocking out with your armor in most cases here. But luckily, it's just damage. So not anything super crazy.
Well, I was going to possibly leverage something to that, but honestly, I'm gonna use Autumn's Touch to block for 3.
Okay.
And then I will pass, and then I should have a reaction here in a second. And
Yep.
I'm going to use the Sigil to cover up that last 1 damage of that.
All right. So there you go. So you've successfully prevented that 4 damage. So I went ahead and threw a decent amount, and we were able to tie up our life totals. I have nothing else I can do on my turn, and I will go ahead and pass the turn to my end phase, which will then have me draw up.
So
and now it is over to you.
Remember earlier we had a card in Arsenal, and we also had another card in our hand, but we also kept a blue card. So in this scenario here, we can, in theory, actually come in for at least a decent chunk of I guess, something. And we're going to essentially say we're going to play our arsenal card. And to pay for that, we're going to pitch this flourish over here, which should cover that. And then I could destroy the knuckle. And if you do, it gets +1. We're going to go ahead and just do that because we would like to see how big we can make it. And that's 9.
Yep.
Which is a pretty beefy little thing here.
Yeah, 9 damage is very, very good here, and we definitely want.
That's,
yes, that is a lot of damage coming through, and so in reality, what I want to try doing here is I want to try preventing as much as I possibly can, but I still feel that we have to take stock of what we have in our hand. Now, obviously, Jacob cannot see my hand, but I do want to make sure that if I do take an amount of damage here, can I present that same amount of damage to Jacob here? So let's see here. Let me just go ahead and do some real quick math here.
Math's fun, okay?
Yep, that's it. That's just how it be. I will go ahead.
And I actually did technically screw up here because what I probably should have done, because this was what I really should have done. I don't know if he's going to let me, but I should have popped my Blossom of Spring first, got the one resource to be able to use his ability to create the might token for next turn and can clap back with the +1.
Yeah, something else you could have also done if you wanted to keep cards in your. I am peeking only for the specific scenario, but I do see that it's a red card in your hand. In a situation, this is a more advanced tactic, but you could have pitched the red card first and then the blue, and you would have had one floating resource at the end of your turn here, but you would not have had an arsenal.
Yeah, I was going to stick that in my arsenal. So that's another option that could happen too. Correct.
Yep, tons of options there. So I will go ahead and say,
claim victory. Just kidding.
I believe we could probably present a decent amount back here and really put him on the back foot because Jacob's used a lot of his armor, which means that he's going to have to block with the cards from hand if he wants to actually block out effects. Correct. So I'm going to go ahead and utilize that to the best of my own ability here. And I'm going to block out 2 and end up taking 7 damage.
I am doing things not as optimal on some purpose here. If you choose, you can create 1 might token, but I don't have the ability to do that, I don't think.
Yeah, so you can pay to create a might token if you wanted to. Because as long as you have an earth card in your pitch, you're able to do it. But if you want to keep a card in arsenal, then you definitely don't want to make sure to pitch. So
I would rather keep that card in arsenal. Correct.
Yeah. So my turn goes ahead and starts. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to play Fry. Fry is going to come in for 2 damage, and it's going to have go again. And so looks like Jacob does not want to block, which is totally understandable. So we'll go ahead and pass that on up then.
Because that is just straight damage, and I'm willing to accept the straight damage.
Yep, that is just damage.
Now that I realized I can hit spacebar, I think I got my hand where I can do
that. So we got that there. Then we have this Starfall coming in for 2 more.
So I'm going to take the gamble that I'm just going to take the 2.
Here you go. So 2 damage going through. Now, in this specific scenario, I'm given quite an option here. Because I can choose with my 2 floating resources to activate Aurora's ability, or I might even want to play the card that is in my hand. So, with this being the case, I might even want to save that for a stronger turn down the line. Because if my opponent's only going to come in with 6 to 8 damage and I can block out a little bit of it, should be fine. But I also have to remember that my opponent does not have any way to prevent arcane damage. So if I do end up wanting to come in with something that has arcane damage, I want to make sure they're at a pretty low life, because they have to take that damage or they perish. So in this situation, I believe that I am actually going to I am actually going to play the card from my hand, which is a Heaven's Claw for 4. So what I've done here is I've chosen to instead throw in a whole bunch of damage here. I have presented 8 where they presented 9, but I do still have a little bit of a trick up my sleeve in that regard. So Canopy Shelter. So when this defends, you create a might token. So luckily it did defend. So that goes ahead and goes through. I could activate my Aether Crackers here to get additional damage off, but I don't exactly think I need to do that just yet. So we'll go ahead and not do that. And then we will move to our end step.
Okay. So we're going to pop the Blossom to give me 1 resource. We're going to play that, and then we sadly don't really get much of a choice on we don't have an earth card to throw, so still coming in for 7, but
yeah, 7 damage is a lot. And in a situation like this, you know, I could choose to keep my entire hand to really put him on the back foot, or I very well could attempt to block here. And in a lot of situations, you know, you want to preserve a little bit of that life total, but I think I actually might be in a pretty good position here to make something special happen in this regard. So what I'm going to do is I'm just simply going to block with 4 and take 3 damage. So I'm using one of my equipment pieces and then also a static shock, which blocks for 3. So I'll take 3 and go down to 5, but that's because I have a pretty okay hand as far as things are concerned. And with no way to prevent arcane damage on my opponent's side, it might actually be the way we win here. So first, what I'm going to do is I'm going to activate my Blossom of Spring. This is going to give me 1 free resource here. But I don't have to utilize this resource on my first attack unless it costs that resource. So we are going to go ahead and we're going to play Sizzle, which again gives that +3 to their next lightning or elemental attack this turn. I'm then going to go ahead and play Fry. Fry is another lightning card, so it does get that +3 from Sizzle, and this will come in for 6 damage.
So my concept is I need to preserve something for that. Which means I need to preserve that card for that. But I'd like to defend, and that's a 6, so these are all going to generate stuff. So let's try that. Let's do that. Let's just play a little bit here. We're going to defend just a 3.
Defending for 3 sounds good. So you'll go ahead and take 3 damage there.
Or, just kidding, we can use this to prevent 2.
So he's got the Sigil of Shelter yellow. He'll prevent 2 more damage there. And now I'm asked if I still want to activate the Aether Crackers. I think I'm going to actually choose to activate them in this specific scenario, because this is going to hit. So it dealt 1 damage and then another 1 because of the Aether Crackers. So 2 damage off there. I do have 1 floating resource, which I am then going to use for Starfall here, coming in for 2 and go again. All right, no blocks there. Then I'm going to go ahead and play the Harness Lightning, which you'll see there were no things that popped up in regards to Harness Lightning. That's because Harness Lightning says if you played a lightning card this turn, deal 3 arcane damage to target hero. And since Jacob does not have any arcane prevention effects and just used the Sigil of Shelter, which could have prevented a little bit of that damage, it just automatically gets to go through, which is puts us in a pretty good spot. So we'll go ahead and pass our turn, and we'll hope that we can survive one more turn to deal a little bit of extra to our opponent.
All right. So I'd really like to have something that has Go Again. The problem is I don't. So because this deck doesn't have Go Again, you're going to see where the fault might lie. So we're going to play for my arsenal the card I've been sitting on, and we're going to pitch here. Now, the problem was I didn't have an Earth card, so it doesn't get overpowered like I was hoping to, which
I see.
I screwed up because I was really should have kept the other card and blocked another one so that it would have had overpower, because that was the whole game plan, was to overpower that thing.
Well, in this specific situation, let's see here. How would we go about activating this here? I think our best plan here is just to go ahead and block 3. Now, we want to keep our boots here in case a situation like this comes up again, where we have to block out an overpowered effect. But taking 2 extra damage here isn't the end of the world. And it still puts us at a life total that is above our opponent. And if I have any arcane damage, I do win this matchup, which is really, really nice for me. Unless, of course, they have a sigil of, or shelter, the shelter thing, sigil of shelter. All right. So there we go. Passed it on through. So now it's going to be my turn. Now, Jacob's at a crucial health point here of 2. And I have to be able to provide enough damage to possibly win here. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to pitch to activate Heaven's Claws. Now, I don't have Go Again on this, but I do now have 2 floating, and I have played a lightning card, which means that I can also activate Aurora's ability to get me an embodiment of lightning token after this is all done and taken care of, which is really, really helpful.
Now, what I need to consider is that a lightning card has been played. So we know that Starfall is coming in after this. And if you played a lightning card, this attack gets +1 and Go Again.
Well, you also have to see that Heaven's Claw does not have Go Again.
So I'm not as worried about that. But if you have some sort of instant that also says if you have damage gives a bonus, then I have a big problem. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do what I believe to be the smart thing, and I'm going to overblock.
Gotcha. Okay. So you'll do that there. I will go ahead and I will say that's good. We'll go ahead and do that. I don't have anything left I can do on this combat chain, but I am going to activate Aurora's ability to create Embodiment of Lightning token. That way, in case if I have anything on my turn that doesn't have Go Again, I can go ahead and keep that in there. So.
All right. Well, we're going to go for the Hail Mary here, which is going to not do me terribly well, because he's just going to block it.
For 6.
I really needed to somehow get some might tokens, but I have negated my might token ability creation at this point. So
I see.
But he can't block with just 1 3 card, because then 3 would come over and he would still be gone. which means he'd have to either go for, and I don't remember if that deck has a lot of 3 blocks. It might only be 2s, which means he'd have to go for 2 blocks, which is 4, meaning he'd be at 1 theoretically if we are at where we are.
And in this situation, it's actually in a pretty good spot because I do still have my Iron Rot legs to help me out here. So I can play it a little risky, block with a 3 block, and then also my Iron Rot legs to bring me down to 1 life to my opponent's 2.
But
so we're gonna do that. I think we're gonna do that. So that's the case there. And I'm going to take this risk because I expect there to be some big deal here. But luckily, Concuss, while their active layer is up here, their power is not greater than their base. So I don't actually get to discard a card, which is really, really good for us. So that works out. All right. So now on to me. I'm going to go ahead and start by playing this Spark Spray. Now, Spark Spray has go again because I had that embodiment of lightning on our last turn. And it'll come in for 3 damage. And it does have go again, which means that I do have the ability to continue my chain even further, stripping more and more cards from my opponent's hand.
So I guess we have to block. It's a 3, so at minimum, I have to block with a 2.
Spark Spray also does have an ability that says if this is defended by 1 or more cards, I can pay a resource, and if I do, it gets +1. So in reality, I could pitch a card in my hand to give it 1 more damage on top of it also.
And this is probably what'll kill me here, folks, is my decision to only block 2 of the 3.
Yeah, I would say that is normally what will do it there, because I am in fact going to pay for that to buff it to 4.
But I didn't defend by more than 1 card.
It's defended by 1 or more card. So you're defending with 1 card.
I thought it had to be more than 1. Oh,
nope. 1 or more. We can take it back.
All right. How do I roll back 1?
Here, we just hit U.
Oh, got it. Okay.
Or you again. Hold on. We might just need to roll back the turn.
Do I hit you?
No.
I broke it.
Start of this turn.
Oh,
there we go.
Okay. So now I can
so
3 at it.
Spark Spray.
All right.
Coming in.
Oh, I'm stuck with my I have to go 3. That's what I thought. Okay.
So blocking for 3. And in this situation, I am actually still going to pitch so that I can get 4.
Which means I'm still taking the 1.
You're still taking 1, but this is where the fun of instant speed heroes can be, because I am now also going to play Lightning Press to give it another +1 to come in for the 2 additional damage to end the game. So good game.
Either way, I was dead.
Yeah, I did have like 8 answers to that specific situation, so it was definitely I put you in a pretty precarious situation as far as that's concerned. So, but that's it. That's the deck.
Total damage threatened. So you did 41 and I only did 27. That's hilarious.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, a lot of that again comes down to your choices in blocking and effects coming through, right? Because again, you want to at least keep 2 cards in hand, or 1 card in hand that's a blue and a card in arsenal. Because at least in a worst case scenario, you can pitch a blue earth card and your weapon comes in for 4 damage, which is not bad overall. So if most of your turns are spend 3 cards to block my whole turn and then come in for 4 damage, you're at least presenting more damage in that case than I have presented to you and have actually like been able to deal. Because I don't want to block. Aurora doesn't really want to block a whole lot. And if she does, the good news is that most of the cards in the deck do only cost 0 or 1 resources to play. So it works out a little bit for her, but you really have to get it set up and sequenced right to be able to have that, go again into Starfall, into end chain attack. Whereas with uh with Terra, it's simply just pitch a blue, attack with weapon, or pitch a blue, attack with a concuss, pitch a blue, attack with log fall, right? So you have the options available to you as far as those things go. So,
And there are a lot of things I did on that I am sure are way less than optimal. By the way, apparently, hold on, I need to get the right image. 1 second. Haha.
yeah.
You're Hank for all of 30 seconds.
Oh, all right. Let's go. I'm from the Goblin Reserve. My name's Hank. I have a majestic beard, and I love my family.
I didn't even mention when we were there. I was like, man, we have 2 of the most epic beards on this cast. I didn't even think about saying that. I don't know. I missed the opportunity. Opportunity gone.
Well, that's okay. I'm sure Hank will be happy to be back on.
Yeah,
so.
yeah. Now I fixed it. I picked the wrong image during the transition for the studio pre and post. So.
Gotcha. Well, good to know that we're all back here. So that was essentially the concept of the game, right? I mean, it's pretty simplistic and straightforward. I provide a lot of small individual attacks and then sometimes arcane damage, which is really that's the reason I enjoy Runeblade a lot, is because it puts your opponent in a specific thought process of, is it better to take the arcane damage and block out the physical damage? Or is it more important to save a lot of those blues and prevent the arcane damage while it's there than worry about the physical? Or can you block out both? Do you have the ability to do that there? And I know with the Spell Void equipment, the Spell Fray equipment you get in these First Strike decks, you only technically can block out 2 arcane damage, but that's where those cards like Sigil of Shelter and Canopy, Lightning Canopy or whatever, all those cards, the preventative effects. You can prevent damage that is arcane based on those effects. And so it's very effective when it comes to really trying to get that out. But at the end of the day, it's all about just, can you sequence cards and take risks to present enough lethal damage to your opponent. So while there was that turn where, that card came in for 9, I was like, that's a lot of damage coming in if I'm at 15 life. But if I know that I can present somewhat okay damage on my turn and give you a lot more of a, you have to block these cards, otherwise you're going to also go down to a really low life total, then it works out good. So think more of a defensive style for Terra and not so much aggressive. Even though you do get those might tokens, but when you get those might tokens, they're great for those concuss turns. Because if you come in with a concuss for 7 instead of for 6, then if any of it hits me, I have to discard a card, which is a super big feels bad and definitely would not have presented as great of a turn as if it came in for 6 damage. So,
and I by no means played that at any way, shape, or form probably as good or made good decisions. So feel free to make fun of me in the comment section below. I will take all of it on the chin. I'm definitely a mech player, and the funniest thing is, right, these classes play totally different style than how the mechanologist class plays. And another anecdotal weird piece of information is, I was just looking, because apparently Talishar puts this out there, there are 90 concurrent games going on at 11 p.m. on a Thursday night randomly. So, there are tons of people playing this game. So while it may not be at your LGS necessarily, there are a huge number of people playing online at any given time.
Yes, it's a great resource, honestly. Talishar does really, really good. If you are in a situation where you do not have the capability to go to an LGS, whether it be for disability sake or it be for just like there's not a scene there, if you can't go, there are options for you to play, whether it be through Talishar, or you can even join some of the many Discord groups that exist.
Sure.
Discord groups are able to, set up webcam games for people to play. I know that completely off topic only because like I was looking into it, but Pixelborn is
Yeah, that's a whole
it's
nother ball of
like
wax.
a it's like a Lorcana. It originally started as a Lorcana
Yeah, there's a
uh
whole story with that, man.
thing.
Yeah,
Yeah,
they
but
yeah.
they've the guy is
It's a
is
webcam game
redone it.
feature. Yeah.
Yeah, so now it's webcam games, and they're just now getting all the stuff in for Flesh and Blood. So you're able to play Flesh and Blood on Pixelborn if you really want to. There's like a rank system and like a queue you can sit in. I don't know how many people are playing on Pixelborn, to be fair, but that's a nice little like webcam series that you can do if you're trying to get some games there. There's plenty of ways to play, and frankly, you can even utilize things like Felt Table. Felt Table is another great resource. It pits you against AI to play, and the AI is pretty well done. So if you're trying to get just the general feel of your deck as to how to sequence it properly, or how to, kind of figure out the ratio of blues to reds in your deck or whatever, then Felt Table is a great choice for that too. So
And there was another client that was doing like a digital simulator, and they were at Origins. I don't remember their name, but the idea on it was it looks at your table, and then when you put the physical card down, it like put the digital card over that, so it was much more crisp. It like analyzed that image and then threw the digital asset over top of it. I don't ever know what happened to that. I thought I got their business card at one point, but I don't remember what ended up happening with it. So
that would be cool.
I'm actually installing Pixelborn now just to be curious because I'm.
That's what I did. I installed Pixelborn and I got it all set up, and then I went to go, and it was like, I guess I wasn't. They didn't initially tell you that it was a webcam based thing. There's like a webcam setup feature there to kind of give you that concept, but I had initially thought it was like a Talishar-esque thing, and so I went to go create a deck, and it was just like choose your hero, and I'm like, okay, cool. And then like it immediately put me into a queue, and I'm like, oh, are they pre-made decks? And then I went to go back to check my decks, and there was nothing inside of them, and I was like, how does this make any sense? I don't understand how this is working. How does it know what cards to put inside the deck? And I'm like, wait a minute, it's just webcam. You're just choosing your hero that you're playing over webcam, and that's it. So that's a cool thing. Hopefully that does pretty well for itself. But I like Talishar if I need to, but honestly, go to your LGS. Even if you don't have any of the good cards, quote unquote, or any of the big staples, go to your LGS and find out what format they're playing in, or even just ask people who are hanging out there.
Anymore.
Yeah, it's you can just ask people around and be like, hey, I'm new to the game. I just like some tips and some advice on how to grow with the game, and everybody there will be able to help you out. So most people even have like giant bulk boxes they can just like slam down on the table and go, here, take your fill.
Like,
right? Exactly. I don't know. Right. You and me both, brother. I still have to sort through all this stuff. So
they
it's
have Disney
great.
Lorcana, Star Wars Unlimited, Terrestrials, Altered, One Piece, and Flesh and Blood. So they have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different games apparently. On the Pixelborn.
Yeah. Yep. It's a pretty neat system. Again, I haven't really tried it out, but I think
just
that
looking to see if anybody was on it. Does not look like anybody is on there trying to wait to play, unless it doesn't show who's waiting. So
it doesn't.
Got it.
I think the concept here is what you do is you go to the Pixelborn Discord, and then you tell people that you're waiting in queue, and that people can then join you in your queue for it. But here nor there, right? Honestly,
yeah,
Talishar is probably...
I would say I would take Talishar 10 times over this.
Talishar.net's probably the easier thing, right? But if you, yeah, exactly. If you have, learning how to play the cards in the correct order and things like that is so much more in depth when you're playing in person than it is when you are playing on Talishar, because again, Talishar automates a lot of stuff for you.
I've heard that
things like
some bad habits, though. That's the only thing.
Yes, exactly. That is something that is easy to bring up. Is that, for instance, Findel Spring Tunic, right? Findel Spring Tunic. It's a legendary piece of equipment that's used in many of decks, and its whole concept is at the beginning of your turn, you put an energy counter on Final Spring Tunic. And once you have 3 energy counters, and you can only have a max of 3, at any point you can remove those energy counters to get 1 resource. The difference between playing in person and playing on Talishar is Talishar will automatically put a counter on your Final Spring Tunic in
Which
order
is
for
why
you
a lot
to
of people, I think, forgot to
eventually
always
tick
pick
that
up
up.
Tunic.
Yep. And whenever anybody is at your locals, they start their turn and they start, they go to play an action and they say, "Oh, I forgot to tick up my Tunic." It's because they probably are playing a lot of Talishar and are used to Talishar doing it for them that they forget that step. But if you're in a like actual big competitive event and you forget to tick up your Tunic and you start your turn by playing your actions and stuff, you have missed that trigger. And you do not get to put a token or a counter on your Tunic. So it is important to note. But bad habits aside, if you're just casual and you're trying to learn the game a little bit, Talishar is a great way to do that.
So I'm going to wrap up with one other item here. So we talked about these Terra and Aurora decks, but there is something else magical coming to a game store near you, and that is none other than the Dash IO CC Classic Constructed, for those that may not know, Armory deck, which an Armory deck is like the one that's behind me here, which I'm now microscopic, so you probably can't even see it, but that is what it is. It's an all-in-one, an all-encompassing deck. I bought the very first one, KO, and left it sealed. I don't really know why at this point, so I have one that's open, but now I have another, and I was going to collect one of each of these sealed, but I said to myself, no, it's just not worth doing. But Dash is a mechanologist, which means I'm happy because now we have a mechanologist that you can pick up. And there's some pretty cool little pieces of equipment in here, which obviously these are much different than the Aurora and the Terra type of equipment for a lot of reasons. One, it's a different class, and 2, these are higher higher rarity level, so Majestic in this case, meaning that their abilities are probably exponentially, I can't always say better, but in this case they definitely are Majestic for a reason.
It's better than an iron rod helmet, I'll tell you that much.
Have you seen what some of these do yet? Have you?
Oh yeah, I keep up. Yeah, I think that this is a lot of insane stuff. I think Cerebellum processor is
I need to know.
Crazy.
So what is it's a blue 3 pitch. I'm sorry, 3. It's a blue, so it's generating 3 resources. 0 to play. It has crank. It is an item.
Yep.
Now, enters the arena with 2 steam counters at the start of your turn. Destroy this unless you remove a steam counter. Once per turn action, draw a card. Now, it's not an instant, but it gives you a card. Boop, boop. And because it has steam counters, I can steam on, steam off with crank, right? So, if, what decks is Max going to play this? Is all mechs going to play this? Like,
yeah, I think a lot of people with, because the thing with crank is that you can play it, and then when you play it, you can remove one of those steam counters, and if you do, you gain an action point. Which you can then spend that action point. Yeah, which you can then spend that action point to draw a card with Cerebellum processor, especially if, especially in Dash's specific situation, where you end up getting a lot of cards with crank or boost, or you play things like, I'm sure High Octane is going to be in this deck, and when you boost, you're going to get additional action points. And so if you have all these leftover action points, you can use one of those action points to just draw you a card with Cerebellum processor, and then one free card, like drop, quite literally, for those who don't know, the entire Classic Constructed format just got a "we don't like drawing cards" ban in the entirety of it. And so now a whole bunch of cards that initially drew cards are banned from use in the game. So any card that says draw a card is huge still. Even if it's one card, it's way more on rate to use an action point to draw a card, because that's that give and take, right? But that extra card you draw could very well be the max velocity you need to turn off to end your 3 boost turn, or anything of that sort. So
we're fast and furious because we're gonna shift up and blow our engine. I mean, I'm just we're gonna mechanologist for boost.
And that's even the other thing. Look at that. Like, when this is banished from boosting, you put a steam counter on an item you control with crank, so you can get another free card draw on Cerebellum by just having this be boosted away. The deck's going to be really fun.
Oh, I can't wait. Can't wait. So, All right. Well, I am going to say that I feel this is a solid. We got a gameplay in too. That was on my check bucket list for one of the Geek Speaks. There is to actually
There
do
you
that.
go.
That's something I miss. I hate to say that I don't do as much gameplay as I used to because it is you pick one or the other. You really pick I'm going to make a content or I'm going to make content specifically in gameplay, which means you are playing games. But I make so much content about the game and news and other stuff that I seem to have lost some of my elegance in knowing how to play. So I need to brush up on some of that stuff, man. It's
Well, I'm telling you, if you really want to, every single time we do one of these, we can just pop up a game of Clash or Commodore or something, and we can just do that
heck
while
yeah.
we shoot the shit and talk a little bit about the topics and go about the game and kind of just like do the thing you would do in Flesh and Blood, which is just communicate with the community and hang out and have a good time.
It's
So
a
I don't mind
virtual
slamming
table,
through
sitting
games.
across a virtual table playing a virtual game while we have a virtual drink. And in my case,
Exactly.
caffeine free because it's after 9 o'clock, and that makes sure my heart doesn't go button out of my chest.
And I'm drinking water. So you can tell how old we are when we we no longer are drinking energy drinks and 15 cups of coffee a day.
Ooh, man, those energy drinks, man, there's some dangerous stuff. That's
Yep. Don't drink Celsius. I don't care what any of you guys are doing in your day-to-day life. Don't ever drink Celsius, all right? That thing's got more caffeine in it than Monster does, and I think that's a problem. So this is my PSA to you as somebody who loves to
Okay.
drink Monster. Don't drink Celsius, all right?
I will.
There's something in there.
There's something in there. There's something.
Yeah, there's something in there. Yeah, exactly. You need a little bit of this.
I'm laughing too hard. Any final comments, words, thoughts, comments, concerns, speculations? Are you going to any pre-release events yourself in the next 2-3 days?
I am. I actually set myself up for 2 pre-releases this weekend, one on Sunday
Excellent.
and one on Monday. So very, very excited. That was pretty much going to be what I was going to say. Actually, this will release after pre-releases.
This one will. But
So if you did go to a pre-release, I hope you had a fantastic time. Outside of that, get prepared for the classic constructed meta to shift. Get prepared for the commoner meta to shift. Get prepared for the Clash meta to shift.
there's a lot of crazy.
I love a lot of. I'm not really super big into like wizards, so I can't talk on that spot. But a lot of these cards and these sets are really good for the rarity that they're at. And we haven't even seen them fully realized in these decks yet. So
I know
if
that
you
there's
like
been these funny like memes going around on Twitter of like this is 100 and something damage, 4-card combo, and it's like what? I don't know how true any of those are, but like it's...
they can certainly happen, but in those situations you also have to realize that those are quite literally the best scenario. I mean, you have to have crafted your second cycle to be so incredibly precise for something like this to happen. And so
Sure.
in reality, that's not going to happen a whole lot. Can maybe like a quarter of that damage happen regularly? Probably, right? That could probably happen. And like a quarter of 117 damage is at least way more than it should be. So if that happens to be the case, cool, but that's all depending, right? Just play at your own pace, enjoy the game, try out some new stuff, and don't forget to ask your friends at your LGS for bulk, because they will have it and they will not want it, and you will go ahead and get it. I'm getting so much bulk, Jacob. I'm getting so much. I just found out Monday. I found out last Monday that somebody who normally gives me my bulk has somebody who's asking him if he wants their bulk, and they've been playing the game for like a long while.
Okay.
And so there's like another like 20,000 some cards I might be getting and having to organize through.
Oh yeah.
And then there's all the Rosetta stuff that's coming out that I know I'm going to get from him. So if you need cards, go ask your locals for bulk. I promise you they'll give it to you for free in most cases. So it's pretty good. That's it. That's all I got. watch Ash and Wings TCG. I'll have content over there too. So
excellent. Well, thanks for tuning in. This is going to wrap up episode 14. We are cruising along. If people would stop unsubscribing, I would greatly appreciate it. Thank you very much. But for those of you sticking around, thank you. And we'll keep making content as much as we can. So until next time, may your games be fun and your friendships grow. Cheers.
bye, everybody.
Bye.